Hi there. My name is Ellie Deminico, and I am the National Sports Media Association intern from Wake Forest University. And today I'm joined with Arizona's Sportscaster of the Year, Jon Bloom. Jon, thank you so much for joining me today. Just to start out with the first question, can you just walk me through your journey from that childhood moment when you decided that you wanted to be a broadcaster, through your time at Syracuse, and then up to becoming the voice of the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, that's a lot. Be careful what you ask for, Ellie. You might be sitting there listening for a minute. Yeah, it was a while ago. I mean, I actually found out pretty early. I think I was 11, was the actual moment that I always think back to when I discovered, all right, I'm not going to be a professional athlete, but I love sports so much that I need to find a way to be involved in it, as kind of part of my life or a big part of my life. Now, hopefully that would be a job and I'd get paid to do it. But at that point at 11, I was just like, all right, you need to just figure out what you can do to be in it. And I knew that I wasn't going to be an athlete because I was in a family full of non-athletes. And as much as I loved playing sports and still do, I was real about my limitations, and I was always, full on effort, hustle guy, but just didn't really have the genes, so to speak, to get me to the A teams on a lot of the competitions I was in until I met golf and I actually was able to excel a little bit in that sport, but never to a point where I would say, all right, this is going to be my profession. I knew I didn't have it upstairs. I didn't have the temperament to be a pro golfer. And so then it was just about, all right, how do you get into this field? And, if you go back to when I was coming out of college in the late 90s, a little different than now. I've had a lot of these conversations lately just about what it would be like now, coming out with the same kind of resume that we had when we were leaving school. And I think there's an argument to be made on both sides. Now, for me, what it boiled down to was leaving Syracuse in 1997, feeling like I was on top of my game, having gone through the whole iron sharpening iron experience with so many other people that I'm sure you're talking to in this role that are winning these awards all across the country. And it was such a great experience to be there, surrounded by so much talent in the years that I was there. And obviously that's what, kind of gave me the message to make my journey across the country from the Bay Area where I grew up, to Syracuse for college. And that's where I really, feel like it got serious. Now, I could tell you it goes back to 11 because that's when it dawned on me that I wanted to do this. But when I got there at 18/19 as a freshman, and realized what I was up against and kind of the competition of it, I think that's when it, as I said, it got real for me, and it actually turned into a situation where I felt like if I'm able to thrive here, I can actually make it in this business. I feel like because of looking around and seeing how many other people wanted to do exactly what I wanted to do. And so, it took a while. And obviously, it wasn't just an immediate success story. There really aren't any with regards to the way things are set up at Syracuse. And you have to pay your dues and put your work in. And that was great for me because I think, that's something that my parents instilled in me is work ethic. And hopefully I've done the same to my kids. And that has definitely helped me so much throughout my career because I had to wait a long time to get to a place where I felt like this is what I want to do and what I've meant to be doing since I was 11. And that was a combination of factors. I think a lot of things are about where you start. I started in Detroit, which was a great place out of Syracuse to get into sports radio. And I ended up finding a couple of play-by-play gigs on the side of my anchoring and update job and reporting job, which was, 7 days a week at that point in time for very little money, but it was an amazing experience. And then the hustle and that work ethic is what enabled me to go, become voice of Oakland University basketball when they just made the transition from Division II to Division I, and then Wayne State University football and a few other things on the side that I think led me to be able to then come to Arizona 6 years into my career when my wife got an opportunity out here in Phoenix. So we moved across the country, and I didn't have a job here when we moved, and it was really about her And I just kind of felt like, all right, well, maybe starting over in a newer city, I'll have an opportunity here if I can just, kind of show the work ethic and put the time in and effort in. And I did. And at first it was golf broadcasting. I was still doing a golf radio and TV show in Michigan. And I did that for about a year after moving to Phoenix, going back and forth and hosting remotely from out here. And then it was adding CBS sports to it and doing some golf behind the scenes work with CBS Golf. And then the Cardinals hired me to be the public address announcer and pre-half and post-game show host on the radio. And I got to do some play-by-play for them in the preseason, filling in for another award winner, Dave Pasch, and another Syracuse grad. And so, it was just kind of piecing together things as I went. But in the end, where I ended up and where I am now and what enabled you to reach out to me is the Phoenix Suns. And having a chance to work for a team that I actually have been a fan of since I was 13, that's a whole nother backstory. But Kevin Johnson is the reason for it. He was my favorite player of all time. I went to Cal basketball camp and got to meet him as a young player. It's probably around the same age, 11 or 12. And he became my favorite player. And then when he came to the Phoenix Suns as a rookie in 1988, they became my team. So that was as a 13-year-old. It's been a long time being a fan of that franchise. And now I've worked for them for 18 years. And it's been an amazing experience. When I got the job, the legendary play-by-play voice of the Phoenix Suns, Al McCoy, was 75 years old. And I was thinking to myself, well, it's probably a matter of time, and then he's going to retire, and they're going to need a new radio play-by-play guy. And little did I know just the effect that Al had on all Suns fans and Phoenix sports fans and really anybody that has come into contact with the Valley. I mean, this man is an absolute icon in the Valley. So to take over for somebody like that, in a way, I'm kind of glad that I had the runway that I did to get to know him the way I did, to get to appreciate what his value was to this area, and then to obviously understand what it's going to be to take over for a guy like that. What I didn't know was that he was going to do 15 more years, and it was going to give me a real test in patience, and that's what it was. But the silver lining behind all of that waiting time was, again, all those things I already mentioned about the relationship I created with Al, but also the relationship I was able to have with my daughters, who, were both really little when I started with the Suns, and now one's in college and one's getting ready to go to college. And they both told me independently that they were happy I didn't have this job that had me traveling all over the globe as much when they were little. I was the one who was home doing most of the errands and the cooking and the cleaning and taking them places to practices and stuff like that. And that was awesome. So I guess in the end, it works out the way it should. Now I'm in my third year as play-by-play guy for the Phoenix Suns, living the dream that I really have had since I was 13. And it's an awesome place to be. And I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of kind of my abilities and my love for what I do. And so that's exciting too.
That's amazing. Just amazing. And kind of inadvertently, as you've mentioned, radio play-by-play has its own entire art form when painting pictures for these listeners who aren't necessarily watching visually. So how do you specifically approach that craft, and what do you want fans to feel when they're tuning in?
Yeah, that's my love for the phrasing there, is calling it an art form. And I think everybody who does it would probably agree with that, because it really is. I mean, we all get kind of a structure to it, especially if you get trained like we did at WAER in Syracuse, where you're going through kind of all of the nuts and bolts of play-by-play and painting the picture and, the economy of words and being able to kind of limit your description, but at the same time describe what you're seeing as well as you can for those who don't have the images. And we're specifically talking about radio play-by-play right now, such a different art form than television. And I remember recently seeing another Hall of Famer, Al Michaels, make a comment about the art form of TV play-by-play being basically the form of captions and ellipses is what he said. And that's what you do as a TV play-by-play guy. In a way, I completely agree. And it's part of the reason why I do love the art form of radio, because you are able to really express yourself in a different way than you are when you're in essence a host on the television broadcast, and you're hosting almost a talk show in some essences with your analyst, and that can be another great art form, and it's a totally different one. But for me, I grew up with that clock radio right next to my ear, listening to the greats in the Bay Area that I remember so fondly, like Bill King and Hank Greenwald and Joe Starkey and all the guys that really, kind of cemented my style just because that's what I grew up with. And then it just went from there, and going to Syracuse and having the access to meet the legends that I grew up watching on TV, and all of those guys having kind of their own impact on what I'm doing now. And then it's just an evolution of it. I think that's why I also like it being called an art form, because I don't think art's ever done. I think if you're an artist, you can continue evolving until you're absolutely done making that art.
Absolutely. And so to kind of piggyback off of that, for young broadcasters and aspiring media professionals today, who are chasing their dream like yours of entering this field, whether that be radio or television or podcasting, what advice would you give to them about staying patient and finding their own voice, and then also finding opportunities within the field?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing I like to tell young broadcasters is find your passion, and sometimes that's easy, but sometimes that's not. And a lot of times, you might be searching around in your own mind, saying, "Well, I'm not really sure what I'm passionate about. I just know that I want to do this, or I know I want to be on TV, or I want to be an influencer." If it's a young person nowadays, so all of those things, it's fine to think about it from a broad form. But if you can narrow it down, the further you do, I think the better you have a chance to thrive. And so that's something that for me, I was told at a young age, young broadcasting age, to be versatile and to do as much as I could. And so I did. And that's something that I continued to do throughout my career, not knowing when my break or what my break would be, right? And so for those reasons, I feel like I was able to maybe get some opportunities, and they broadened my skills as a broadcaster, and hopefully made me a better broadcaster and a better person altogether. So I think being versatile is also very important. So I'm kind of throwing two combating things at each other when I tell you find your passion, but also be versatile. I think that they are two things that can combat each other, but there are also two things that you can do hand in hand, and they can both lead to success, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, it makes absolute sense. And especially as a young professional like I am, that's incredible advice. So thank you. And thank you again so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And congratulations again on your recognition as Arizona's National Sportscaster of the Year.